In losing at home to Werder on Sunday, not only did it kick the conversation and scrutiny surrounding Bayern's season into overdrive, but it was one of their worst Bundesliga performances at the Allianz Arena in quite some time. It was Werder's first win at the stadium since 2008, almost 16 years ago. It also marked the first time that Bayern had failed to score at the Allianz Arena in 4 years, the Kovac days. It was here that Tuchel, when asked about why the performance wasn't improved following their training camp in Portugal over the winter, said, quote, "You'll have to ask the players." Not what you want to hear, really. He went on to say, quote, "We played today like it didn't matter, as if we were 10 points ahead and had a Champions League match to play on Tuesday." And he's not wrong, as he also said that they didn't play like a team that wants to win a championship and that they deserved to lose. And of course, with a certain Neverkusen looking like a maybe Kusen at the top of the table, it has caused everyone who supports Bayern, as well as the major German media, to question, well, absolutely everything about the club. A bit of a tailspin is happening live before our eyes, both among some fans who find poor play hard to comprehend and poor results even more so. But is it really as bad as some of the recent reactions would have you believe? Hi, I'm Adrian, and I really want to take a measured look at Bayern this season, the reasons to criticize Tuchel, where some are taking it too far, as well as the context of this season and my opinion on it. Sorry, you gotta listen to my opinion in this video. I know. Before we get to that, however, in the name of talking about Bayern's own self-improvement, or striving to, I've been working on myself, thanks to our sponsor for this video, BetterHelp. Now, I've been using BetterHelp for quite some time now, a few months, since September of 2023 actually, and lately my therapist and I have really been getting into letting go of the things that don't serve me anymore. Mainly, we speak of things I've been carrying with me since I was about 19 and decided to move across the country away from my family. And I'm really glad that I got back into therapy. It's been so helpful, but the thing that I've liked the most about BetterHelp in particular is that it's all remote. It's their mission to make therapy affordable and accessible because, trust me, I know finding a good therapist near you can be difficult and intimidating. To get started, you just fill out a few questions and BetterHelp can match you to a professional therapist in as little as a few days. Plus, changing therapists comes at no additional cost. You aren't locked in with anybody. So it's super easy to sign up and get matched with a therapist, and there's a link in my description for you, betterhelp.com/RabonaTV. And clicking that link gets you 10% off of your first month of BetterHelp. So if you're struggling, consider online therapy with BetterHelp by going to betterhelp.com/RabonaTV. Connect with a therapist and see if it helps you. Thanks again, BetterHelp, for supporting Rabona TV. Now, let's remind ourselves of how we got to the Tuchel era at Bayern in the first place. Back in March of 2023, Tuchel replaced the outgoing Julian Nagelsmann, which was a bit mystifying, to say the least. The then 35-year-old German was given his marching orders just 1 week after Bayern had lost 2-1 to, well, who else but Bayer Leverkusen, the current thorn in the foot of Bayern Munich. That loss to Leverkusen saw Bayern drop from first to second, which wouldn't last long, as Bayern would of course defeat Borussia Dortmund in Tuchel's first Bundesliga match in charge because, well, they always defeat Borussia Dortmund these days, and so Bayern reclaimed the lead of the Bundesliga right away, basically. At this time, Bayern were still in the Pokal, won the Super Cup against Leipzig at the beginning of the season, and were also undefeated in the Champions League with a perfect record, winning every group stage match, as well as their round of 16 matches against PSG, of which they kept a clean sheet in each game and won each game. Upon Tuchel taking over after reclaiming first in the Bundesliga, they would be dumped from the Pokal by Freiburg in early April and would shortly be eliminated from the Champions League by eventual winners Manchester City. No real surprise there. In the Bundesliga, Bayern would swap between first and second with Borussia Dortmund, and upon losing their penultimate match 3-1 to RB Leipzig, Borussia Dortmund had the opportunity to snap Bayern Munich's domination at 10 consecutive titles. It was in their own hands. But, well, we all know what happened there, and Bayern won their 11th straight title in an incredibly unconvincing fashion on goal difference. So you could excuse Tuchel's performance last season because, he came into it when there was about 8 weeks remaining in the season. That's asking a lot of somebody, and some trip-ups could be excused. So what about this season, with Tuchel fully in charge, and with the addition of a spectacular goal scorer such as Harry Kane to fill that Lewandowski void? Bayern are, as things stand, in second place, 7 points behind Bayer Leverkusen, and undefeated Bayer Leverkusen, remember. Bayern boasts the best attack in the league, with the second best defense in the league, second only to Bayer Leverkusen. Bayern also have a match in hand, it must be said. If they win that match, they would be 4 points behind. How does their performance of 41 points from 17 matches played compare to that of last season? Last season, Bayern were in first place after 17 matches with a 3-point lead over Borussia Dortmund, where Bayern had 36 points after 17 last season. This season, they have 41 points, so they are 5 points to the good compared to last season. I bring this up because I am seeing Tuchel's points per game being brought up a lot, which is at 2.11 across his Bayern career. In other words, that takes into account last season, and that number would account for the lowest number for a Bayern manager since 2011. It's shocking to hear that, yes, but I will say last season was very, very shaky, as Tuchel's points per game was just 1.67 across all competitions. This season, with his record of 19 wins, 3 draws, and 4 losses across all competitions, 2.31 points per game. That's much better, but also the exact same as Nagelsmann's points per game with Bayern across all competitions. So, bar that embarrassing, very embarrassing exit to Saarbrücken in the Pokal, the improvement on results has had a marked increase in the league. Well, 5 points increase, but Tuchel's overall performance hasn't been any better than Nagelsmann's, really. I think it's fair to say. But the performances of late have been the worrying thing. Even when winning against Köln and Hoffenheim recently, Bayern have looked quite poor, and the Werder loss at home, with a former player scoring the death blow, by the way, was a pretty pathetic watch from Bayern's own standards. They're a club that is used to seeing their team roll over their opposition for the most part. Not just getting results, but the way in which they get said results is typically far more convincing, or at least that's what the supporters have become used to in the past. They had a ton of time over the holiday training in Portugal, where you would have expected Bayern to return and be much better than they were upon the resumption of the Bundesliga this January. However, I will get into how they have done historically upon returning from the winter break later in this video. But the heat is on Tuchel due to how Bayern have been playing, which at times has been quite drab. To that I will say, is this a continuation of how he was at Chelsea? It kind of was. He was beloved for that first half season he was in charge, coming to the club in January, then winning the Champions League later that season in 2021. Just a ridiculous turn of events, and deserved given how good Chelsea were defensively. He made a huge difference. They were not pretty to watch. It was results-based football, and they got a great result out of it with their second Champions League triumph. But there were blunders along the way as well. That's not uncommon with him, both in the league and the FA Cup final. It's kind of just what you get from Tuchel these days, the modern Tuchel. At times the football is uninspired looking and touch and go, but for the most part, you get good results out of him. I also think there's something kind of funky going on behind the scenes. Of course, last season, both Khan and Salihamidzic, I always say his name wrong, sorry, left. And with Freund taking over most of the recruitment, there have been some great signings and then some questionable decisions, of which I'd love to know who had the final say of. In particular, I'm looking at the right back position, where Mazraoui has been the only real choice there, while they sold Pavard, who can play that position, and loaned Stanisic to Bayer Leverkusen, leaving Tuchel to choose to play Leimer at right back of late, rather than Kimmich, which is interesting, instead of putting Leimer in midfield and then Kimmich at right back. As well, there's the whole number 6 debacle from the summer, where Palhinha took photos with the kit, and then the move was dropped, and Tuchel still seemingly wanted a 6 for this side. Kimmich told him that he wanted to play 6, even though he's probably better as an 8. Tuchel finally relents and lets him play there, only to go ahead and sign Eric Dyer. I don't know whether he'll be played as a 6 or a defender at this point. Tuchel has said he could play both, but we'll see. It's a bit of a mess there, isn't it? So you take all of this mess, as I just said, and toss it in the blender, and what do we think, guys? Yes, we have arrived to the opinion part of this, and my opinion is that Harry Kane has brought Sprasitis to Bayern. Thanks for watching. Joking, of course, but getting straight to it, perhaps it could be seen as a crisis, but by their standards only. For a team that typically has the Bundesliga in complete control, Xabi Alonso and his boys have raised the standards when it comes to recent challengers to Bayern. Not just challengers, but general performance. This season, coupled with how Bayern won the Bundesliga through Dortmund's failures on the final match day, has painted a picture of a Bayern that is no longer all-conquering and unchallenged in the Bundesliga, but the crisis is simply a normal, somewhat underwhelming season for any other big club in Europe that doesn't seemingly have the league title in their pocket before the season begins. It's a unique situation, and therefore it's judged uniquely as well. Again, if this is a crisis, it's a crisis that only Bayern can achieve, given their over a decade-long dominance of the Bundesliga. Not just the past 11 seasons, but Bayern have won the Bundesliga 19 times out of the previous 25 seasons. You can understand how that can warp reality a bit, both for the good when it comes to creating winning habits within the club, and the bad when it comes to simply accepting that sometimes you have to go through a dip in order to come out stronger on the other side, rather than scrap everything and try with someone new all the time. Say what you will about Bayern's performances, and you are right to point to them as unconvincing of late, but the truth of the matter is that this season, Bayern is actually on track to have a great point haul. Not as good as Guardiola's or the 2012-13 one, that dominance of the league, but on top of that, they find their form again, and they're on track to score 104 goals, which would be a record for them. Their current point trajectory would actually be good enough to win the league a few times over the past few seasons. For a team that typically has the Bundesliga in complete control, Xabi Alonso and his boys, they've raised the standards when it comes to recent challengers to Bayern. Where Bayern had previously lifted the ceiling to an unreachable level for those around them at times, now Leverkusen is the one that's threatening to take it one rung higher. Mind you, Bayern managed to win the league with 8 draws and 5 losses last season, hardly an unreachable level that they set. Just that Borussia Dortmund tripped and fell with their forehead just short of the finish line. But the point remains, their title challengers, bar last season, haven't been up to task, and now that they have not just a challenger, but a club that is showing them up in the league, a dip that would otherwise have not been paid much attention to is in the glaring spotlight. A lack of a true opponent in the title race has allowed Bayern to expect to win the Bundesliga year upon year, knowing that they can drop points in a few matches, only to gain power and surge to the end and win it again. Not to mention, losing after the winter break is nothing new for them, or at least not winning right after the break. Last season, 3 consecutive draws upon their return. They play Leverkusen away soon, though without some of Leverkusen's best players who are away at AFCON, as well as Palacios, amongst others. This is the big opportunity that Bayern will have, but one thing that one of my favorite writers, Ralf Honigstein, has said puts it absolutely brilliantly. In a recent article on The Athletic, Honigstein wrote, Bayern play with the very sense of humility and determination that the league title-saturated champions find so hard to conjure. Leverkusen are desperate to win the league, while Bayern look like they don't want to be inconvenienced by losing it. That right there seems to be the biggest issue at Bayern right now. One that sees Leverkusen finding winners at the death of their last couple of matches, whereas Bayern, it looks like they don't care half the time. Do I love the kind of football that Tuchel plays these days? No, I miss the old Tuchel, but I accept that he won the biggest trophy of his entire career nearly twice, actually, by playing a football that was more reminiscent of this than of his time at Mainz and Dortmund. That said, he hasn't been perfect, clearly, as was evidenced against Werder, playing Guerrero and Kimmich together in the midfield, 2 players who roam forward, and you saw how easy it was for Werder to hit them on the counter. Who was supposed to stay back? Was it supposed to be Kimmich? I don't know. On top of that, I truly believe that, as we just heard from Honigstein, the issues that they are having in this moment come from a bit of complacency. The so-called crisis is a mixture of just that, being used to winning every year, the uninteresting football that Bayern has been playing under Tuchel of late, and then that feeling is exacerbated by the fact that there is a team that is giving them a genuine run for their money in the league. What Bayern are up against at the moment is a team that hasn't lost once. They're still undefeated, so while this is Bayern we are talking about here, I find it a little bit unreasonable to ask Tuchel to go undefeated for the entire season also. There's a reason why invincible seasons are so coveted, because they are so rare. There's still 50% of the season to go, and it's unlikely Leverkusen will remain undefeated. They may do so, but it's unlikely. So while the actual product on the pitch may not be enjoyable to watch at the moment, the point haul is still very respectable for Bayern. They've only lost twice in the league. And the standard that Leverkusen have set for Bayern, it's a bit unreasonable to hold that against Bayern. So no, I don't believe that any job should be on the line yet, nor that this should be a crisis, whether at Bayern or elsewhere. But what I can say is that if Bayern fails to win the Bundesliga this season, that the manager in charge who oversaw them lose their stranglehold of the league, let their 11-season run come to an end, will certainly have some repairs to do to his reputation. That's it from me, guys, but I definitely want to hear what you have to say when it comes to the situation. What do you think is going on at Bayern? Beyond that, thanks as always for watching, and have a great day. Ciao.